Welcome to another short drawing lesson. This week I thought it would be fun to take apart this picture that I did a few years back, just to have a look at all the layers and things that I used, because I think it's useful sometimes to see how other people arrange or see other people's working practice, basically. Especially if you're just starting out using digital iPad apps or desktop apps. It can be really handy just to see what other people do. So this sketch started out as a little drawing that I did from life at the Mint 400 in Las Vegas. So it was a very bright day and this iPad screen was hard to see, so I'd had to use these big bold strokes. It was actually on white paper originally, a white background. But the first thing I did when I decided to paint it when I got home was to put it on a more sandy coloured backdrop. So I was going to go for a kind of a painterly, loose bit technical feel. So the next thing I did was add a layer underneath my lines, a new layer, and just dropped some colours in using the big square flat brush that comes with a standard, I think. I like the flat brush because it has a sort of painterly quality and it's pressure sensitive, so I used it quite lightly in a lot of places to let this brown kind of show through and add some variation to the colours that I was putting down. I mean, this first step was really literally just put something down so that you can see what you like, what you don't like, and where to go next. Often it's hard to decide until you see something. You can decide what's good, what's bad. The next thing I did was add a layer on top of the lines for the shadows, and this unusual for me. Usually I would carry on working beneath the lines for quite a while because the lines are handy to see where you are, but I knew in this case I didn't want any lines in the final drawing, and so the sooner I started working on top of them, the quicker they would disappear. So this is a shadow layer. So I just started blocking in, again with that big flat brush, you can see the shape of it here, some shadows. And they're not just black, they're sort of browns and reds and purples and all sorts of colours, warm and cool, to keep it interesting really. Anything you can do to add a bit of variety in there is a good idea. Next I started to add some greys for the tyres. I'm using quite a big brush, just being quite rough, just splattering the stuff down just to hide that line drawing and get to a point where I can start deciding what I like about it or what I don't like about it. Next I started with separate layers for each of the colours that were on the vehicle. So I did one for the white here and blocked that in. And again, it's not pure white, it's sort of slightly off-white. There's lots of different colour variation in there, and it's a bit darker than pure white so that you can get the highlights and things still working. Same for the blue stripes down the side, a couple of blue stripes. And the same for the gold on the wheels, and there's some gold edging to these stripes as well. I mean, you can have tens of layers on these apps, so you may as well use them. It's I always think, so much of this process is just trying out stuff and seeing if you like it or not. So that the easier it is to go back if something goes wrong, the better. So I'd say just make as many layers as you like. Just keep adding more. You can always combine them easily afterwards if you want to, but it's easier to go backwards if you made a mistake and if it's on a separate layer. You don't have to repaint everything else that was lost while you were painting on single layers. So there's some blocking and some basic colour. The next thing I did was add some sort of fiery, dusty colours to the ground. I knew I wanted the car in motion, so I wanted dust and stuff flying around. So this layer here just kind of blended the wheels into the dust and made things recede by sort of washing this dusty colour over the front of them so that they drop back a bit. It's all still very loose and messy. Next, another layer for the reds, just like as before, just trying to get the shapes of those in. And then the next thing what I did was I cheated when it came to the text. So the text I've just cut and pasted from my own photos, or even perhaps got stuff from the manufacturers' websites. I just find on a sort of semi-realistic painting where you're trying to get naturalistic proportions and things, some slightly badly drawn or lumpy text can really jump out at you and look terrible. So I find just cutting and pasting things in and then roughing them up a tiny bit if they need it is a better approach. Hopefully it's legal. I have no idea. Yeah, it's extra advertising, isn't it? So the next thing I did was had a look at the sky, that blue in the sky, and I made it a bit more solid. It's still got lots of different shades of blue, and I used it to just sort of chisel in and cut round and define the shape of the vehicle a bit more, just to really firm up things, because it was all a bit washy up to this point. And now I could look at it from a distance and think, yeah, am I happy with the overall feel of this from a distance? Which I was, but close up it still looks rather too messy, I think, for my liking. So I added another new layer, and this was a layer for details. So I wanted to show extra detail in places like on these the tyre treads and the stuff that's strapped to the back of the truck there, the joins in the panels, those kinds of things. The tricky thing, I suppose, is just choosing what level, where to stop. You know, so for some people, they want to draw every single piece of tread photorealistically, which would quickly eat up days or weeks. But for me, I quite like leaving something up to the viewer to fill in the blanks. You know, I want to give them a clue as to what's there, but not spell everything out for them. So that's what I did there. Just sort of cleaned up the wheel arches and the wheel shapes, made the modelling a bit clearer, but didn't go so far as making it photoreal. That's not really what I like. There's a highlights layer next, which is not very dramatic. Often the highlights layer is the really exciting one because it really makes things pop, but because this car is mainly white and it's dusty, it's not really full of shiny, bright specular highlights, apart from here on this sill that sticks out quite a lot. Next I had a fun time with the grunge brushes that I downloaded. So here on a separate layer, I've got this inked up set of grungy brushes like dust and scratches and splots and things, and I just spattered them all over the place, slightly different colours, and then erased them anywhere where there were too many, or where the effect was too distracting. But I think that really added a lot of motion and energy to the picture. That was quite fun, and it knocks back the text and stuff. And lastly, there's this layer here which sort of increases the contrast slightly. It's just slightly below mid-grey, and it's overlaid on everything on the overlay mode. You've got these different overlay blend modes, and using the opacity you can then vary the strength of that contrast. But it's not just flat grey. It would work just as contrast if it was flat grey, but it also has some noise in it. So if I stick it up to 4, you can see this noise, and that's often quite a good thing to add to a digital painting, because there can be areas where it's just sterile and too clinical, where you just get one flat colour and there's no variation. So adding just a subtle bit of paper texture or something like that can really help just soften things a bit and make it feel a bit more natural. And the last thing I added was a bit of text. So there was a guide layer done with the text tool, which I drew over the top of, so that I had kind of hand done text. But it was nicely spaced because I was using a guide. And that's the finished thing. So I was pretty pleased with that. I got the right level of loose and technical that I wanted. But yeah, like I say, it's different. Everybody's got different tastes. But let me know in the comments if you thought that was useful, or if there's anything else you'd like to see, and I'll see you for another one soon.